The citadel of the Kether was alive with noise. Its wide stone halls echoed with voices from many worlds, each speaking in their own strange tongues. The trial night was about to begin again, and as always, the galleries were filled with watchers eager to see who would try, and who would fail. The trial night was not a simple game. It was a test of endurance, a tradition so old that even the Kether elders no longer remembered its true origin. Every year, challengers came from across the stars, warriors, hunters, even noble heirs seeking honor by facing it. And every year, they left broken, carried away before the night was done. Some were defeated within hours, others within minutes. None had lasted until morning. At the center of the hall stood the chamber of the trial, its black doors sealed with silver lines that glowed faintly like breathing veins. Behind those doors waited the one known as Celera, the chosen keeper of the trial. She was young, but her reputation spread far. It was said she never spoke more than she had to, and her eyes could weigh the worth of a soul in a single glance. Strong, relentless, and calm, Celera had never failed to break a challenger. The crowd stirred as the next participant stepped forward. To the surprise of many, it was not a warrior wrapped in armor, nor an alien bred for strength. It was a human. The human was named Marcus. He walked with steady steps, not rushing, not hesitating. His boots tapped lightly against the stone floor. Compared to the towering Kether, or the scaled fighters from distant planets, he looked ordinary, average height, plain clothing, no weapon in hand. Some aliens laughed openly when they saw him. A human, one voice shouted from the crowd. Too fragile, another said. This will be over before the first hour, a third chuckled. Marcus heard them, but he did not answer. His face was calm, and if there was fear in his heart, he did not show it. Instead, a small smile touched his lips, as if he were walking into something familiar, not a trial that had defeated beings twice his size and 10 times his strength. The master of the hall, an elder with silver horns, raised his staff and called out, Marcus of Earth. You stand before the trial night. Once you pass through these doors, there is no return until dawn or until you fall. Do you understand? I understand, Marcus said simply. His voice was steady, not loud, but it carried across the hall. The elder studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then enter, if you have no fear. The great doors began to open. A low hum echoed from within, and a current of strange air swept out, carrying the scent of storms and stone. The light inside was dim, shifting like fire behind thick smoke. Marcus stepped forward. He paused at the threshold for only a breath, then crossed into the chamber without looking back. The doors closed behind him with a heavy sound that silenced the hall. Inside, the air was heavier, thicker. Marcus let his eyes adjust to the dim glow. The chamber stretched wide, with walls of stone and strange carvings that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. At the far end stood Celera. She was taller than Marcus by a head, her frame lean but strong. Her skin carried faint markings that glowed softly in the shadows, like traces of starlight. Her dark eyes locked onto him as he entered, sharp and unwavering. She said nothing at first, only studied him. Marcus met her gaze and smiled again, not mockingly, but as if he were greeting an old friend. So, he said lightly, you must be the one I'm supposed to spend the night with. Celera tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Many had spoken to her before the trial began, but their words were usually filled with pride or fear. His tone was different, calm, almost casual. You are human, she said at last, her voice smooth but strong. That's right, Marcus replied. And you're Celera. I've heard the stories. Then you know you will not last, she said plainly. Marcus only shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. But there's only one way to find out. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Celera's eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring the truth of his confidence. Then, without a word, she turned and gestured to the center of the chamber. The trial had begun. Marcus followed, his steps steady, his heart beating faster now but not with fear, with anticipation. Whatever waited for him in this long night, he was ready to face it. Outside the chamber, the audience settled in, waiting for the familiar cries of defeat. But in their hearts, some wondered, could the human last longer than those who came before? For the first time in generations, there was a whisper of doubt in their certainty of failure. And in that whisper, a spark of curiosity was born. The chamber was quiet except for the faint hum of hidden energy in the walls. The glow from the carvings shifted like breathing light, creating moving shadows across the floor. Marcus stood in the middle, his eyes fixed on Celara. She moved closer, her steps calm and steady. Her presence filled the room with a quiet weight, like the silence before a storm. She was not dressed in heavy armor, she wore a simple dark tunic, marked with the silver crest of the Kether. Yet even without armor, she looked as if nothing in the room could harm her. For years, challengers had come to face her. They had been taller, stronger, or more skilled in combat. But it never mattered. The trial was not only about strength. It was about breaking the spirit. Celara had watched powerful warriors fall to fear, clever minds fall to madness, and proud leaders beg for release. Now, as she looked at Marcus, she felt no fear from him. That was unusual. Most who entered had eyes that flickered with nervousness. His eyes, however, were calm, curious, even. "Why are you here, human?" Celara finally asked, her voice firm but not harsh. Marcus tilted his head, thinking. "Because someone has to try," he said at last. "And because I don't like it when people say something is impossible." Celara studied him. His words carried no arrogance, no loud declaration of victory. They were simple, almost humble. That, too, was unusual. "You understand the trial will not end quickly," she said. "I didn't expect an easy night," Marcus replied with a faint smile. Celara walked around him slowly, her sharp eyes scanning every detail: his stance, his breathing, the way he held himself. She had seen overconfidence many times, but his posture was different. He did not carry himself like a warrior trying to impress. He stood like someone who knew his limits but refused to surrender to them. The trial chamber shifted suddenly. The air thickened, pressing against their bodies like invisible weight. Marcus felt the pressure on his chest, making each breath a little harder. He straightened, forcing himself to inhale steadily. Celara's eyes flickered with interest. "The trial begins with endurance. This is the first layer," she explained, her tone almost instructive. "The chamber will change again and again. Each test is made to break you. And your job," Marcus asked, "is to watch me fail." Her lips moved in the smallest trace of a smile. "My job is to be here, to see if you endure. And to remind you that no one ever has." Marcus chuckled softly. "Well, maybe tonight will be different." The walls shifted again. The carvings glowed brighter, and the floor trembled beneath them. The temperature rose sharply, the air turning hot and heavy. Heat waves shimmered across the chamber, and beads of sweat formed on Marcus's forehead. Celara stood without moving, her body trained to resist the extremes. Marcus pulled off his outer jacket, tossing it aside. "Feels like home in midsummer," he joked, wiping his brow. Celara raised an eyebrow. "You make light of it?" "I've lived through heat worse than this," Marcus replied. "Try working under the sun with broken air systems. This. Just another hot day." His tone was casual, but his skin flushed from the growing heat. Every breath was harder, but he forced his lungs to keep moving, slow and steady. Celara noticed something. Where most challengers wasted energy fighting against the chamber, Marcus saved his strength. He did not push harder than needed. He adjusted. He endured by bending, not breaking. The chamber shifted once more. This time, the heat vanished. A wave of cold swept in, biting and sharp. Frost crawled over the stone walls, and the air stung the skin. Marcus shivered as the sudden chill cut through his clothes. Celery watched closely. Most would panic at such rapid change. Marcus simply rubbed his arms briskly, stamping his feet against the frozen floor. "And now it's winter," he muttered with a grin. He crouched slightly, lowering his body to preserve warmth. Celery's eyes narrowed again. Not only did he adjust quickly, he found humor in it. That humor steadied him, like a shield against despair. "You are different from the others," Celery said quietly. Marcus glanced at her. "Different good, or different foolish?" "Perhaps both," she answered. For a moment, silence fell between them again. Only the faint crackle of frost filled the air. Celery felt a thought creep into her mind, a thought she had never entertained before: could this human actually last? The chamber trembled again, preparing for its next shift. Marcus straightened, rolling his shoulders as if ready for whatever came next. "So," he said with an easy grin, "what's the next trick? Lightning? Falling rocks? A choir of bad singers?" Celery almost laughed. "Almost." Instead, she turned her gaze forward, her voice calm. "The trial has only begun." And so the second test prepared to fall upon them. The chamber shuddered as the trial moved into its next phase. The cold frost on the walls cracked and melted away in an instant. The floor rippled like water, then steadied again. Strange light filtered through the ceiling, shifting in colors that hurt the eyes if one stared too long. Marcus took a slow breath. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down again, heavier than before. The trial was alive, always changing, always watching. Celery stood at his side now, her posture calm and straight. "The second layer has ended," she said. "Now the trial will test your mind." Marcus gave a short laugh. "Good. My mind's the only part of me that doesn't ache yet." Celery did not reply at once. She studied him, waiting for the first sign of fear. For most challengers, this was where they broke. Pain could be fought, heat and cold could be endured, but the mind was different. When the trial reached inside, no one had ever resisted long. The walls began to pulse with light, like giant hearts beating. A low whisper filled the air, soft at first, then louder. Marcus frowned, turning his head. He could hear voices, but they made no sense, words in languages he did not know, some deep and harsh, others thin and high like wind. "What is this?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "Echoes," Celery said. "The chamber shows pieces of memory, fear, and imagination. They are not real, but they feel real. They are meant to break your thoughts." The whispers grew clearer. Marcus blinked. Suddenly, he thought he heard familiar sounds. A laugh, faint but sharp, his younger sister's laugh, long ago on Earth. He froze, his chest tightening. The sound shifted into a different voice, an old commander he had once served under, speaking sharply, criticizing him for mistakes that weren't his fault. Marcus clenched his jaw. Celery watched carefully. His face had changed, his smile gone for the first time. She had seen this moment many times before. The trial dug deep, pulling out what each challenger carried inside. Marcus closed his eyes. The voices swirled, louder and louder, pulling at him, trying to drown him in confusion. But instead of fighting, he sat down cross-legged on the cold stone floor. He let out a long breath and said quietly, "If you want to play tricks, then play them. But I'm not listening." Celery tilted her head. "You, ignore it?" Marcus opened one eye, giving her a faint grin. "Where I come from, people shout nonsense all the time. You learn to tune it out. The whispers grew louder, angry now, as if the chamber itself resented his calmness. The lights in the walls pulsed faster, shadows stretching into shapes. A figure began to form in front of him, a tall, faceless shape, reaching out a long arm. Its fingers were like smoke, wrapping around his shoulders. Celera narrowed her eyes. The trial had chosen to show him fear. Marcus stared at the shape. He felt the pressure pressing against his chest again, his heart racing. But then he laughed softly. Nice try. But you don't even have a face. How am I supposed to be scared of something that can't look me in the eye? The shadow froze, then melted back into smoke. The whispers faltered, thinning into silence. Celera's expression shifted slightly, though she hid it quickly. No one had ever spoken to the illusions like that before. They always believed. They always surrendered. Marcus stood again, brushing frost from his sleeve. So that's it? Whispers and smoke. I was expecting something harder. Celero looked at him carefully. You should not mock the chamber. It will grow stronger the more you resist. Good, Marcus said, stretching his arms as if warming up for a fight. That means it knows I'm still here. The ground shook suddenly. Cracks split across the floor, glowing with red light. Heat surged again, but this time it came with thunder. From the cracks rose more shadows, dozens of them, their shapes shifting into monstrous forms. Some had teeth like blades, others wings like fire. They surrounded Marcus in a circle, hissing, snarling. Marcus turned slowly, facing them one by one. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to smile. You know, he said aloud, on Earth, we have something called bad dreams. And you lot look exactly like those. The funny part is, when you wake up, they're always gone. One of the shadows lunged forward, its claw slicing through the air. Marcus didn't flinch. The claw passed straight through him, leaving no mark. He chuckled. Just like a dream. Celera's eyes widened slightly. She felt it, the chamber's push against him, trying harder, sharper, but his will was steady. He knew the truth. He believed the illusions were powerless. And because he believed, they had no hold. The shadows shrieked, twisting in anger, then dissolved back into smoke, vanishing into the cracks of the floor. Silence fell again. Only the faint hum of the walls remained. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. His body trembled slightly from the effort of staying calm, but he kept his smile. He turned to Celera. So, how am I doing so far? Celera studied him for a long moment. Finally, she said, better than anyone before you. Marcus gave a short nod. Then let's keep going. The chamber rumbled again, preparing the next wave of the trial. The night was far from over. The chamber shivered again, and the air changed once more. Heat and cold were nothing now, they had been mere tests. This was the part of the trial meant to challenge endurance beyond the body, pushing the spirit, the limits of willpower. Marcus stood in the center, muscles tense, yet calm. Celera remained close, watching with an intensity that had become almost respect. She could see something in him that no other challenger had shown, a kind of quiet strength that did not rely on force. The walls pulsed violently, red and black streaks flashing across the stone. The floor beneath Marcus shook, splitting in cracks, glowing with molten light. The chamber screamed with roaring winds, and strange shapes swirled through the air. Shadows of beasts, of fire, of nightmares, twisted and lunged toward him. Most challengers would have fallen to their knees by now. Fear would have gripped them. Every instinct in their body screamed to run, to hide, to beg for release. But Marcus did not panic. He shifted his weight, kept his balance, and let his mind stay steady. One massive shadow swept toward him, a form like a giant wolf made of smoke and flame. Its jaws snapped, teeth bared, moving faster than the eye could follow. Marcus did not flinch. He took a small step forward, arms open, and laughed. "All right, let's dance," he said lightly. The shadow lunged. Marcus moved with careful precision, dodging without strain, letting the shape pass through him harmlessly. Every attack of the trial's illusion struck nothing but air. And with each strike he endured, he seemed to grow calmer, his confidence rising instead of breaking. Celera's eyes narrowed in surprise. Few ever lasted this long. No one had faced the trial with such evenness of mind. And yet, he was doing it almost casually, as if testing her rather than being tested. The chamber shifted again. The molten cracks in the floor hardened into jagged glass-like stone. The shadows multiplied, spinning in a tornado around him. The air burned with heat and whipped with ice. Marcus's lungs filled with sharp, stinging air, but he kept moving steadily. Every dodge, every step, was measured. "You endure differently than anyone I have seen," Celera said softly. "Most fall to fear, but you face it?" Marcus paused for a moment, glancing at her. "Fear is just another challenge," he said simply. "You face it, you survive it. You don't let it rule you." The shadows shrieked louder, spinning faster. One of them struck with a fist larger than a Kether warrior, swinging at Marcus with all its imagined power. He dodged again, rolling under the swing, and came up smiling. "I've had worse punches," he joked. "On Earth, we sparred with steel gloves. This feels like a warm-up." Celera tilted her head. His humor wasn't arrogance. It was focus. And she realized something she had never admitted: Marcus might not just survive the trial, he might conquer it. The chamber quaked violently, and a new wave of illusions appeared. Massive walls of water surged from the stone, rushing toward Marcus like a tsunami. Waves of fire followed immediately after, forming a spiral of extreme elements designed to crush him. The room screamed, a mix of wind, water, and flame, each threatening to overwhelm him. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He crouched slightly, feeling the force of the water pushing at him. He stayed balanced as the waves crashed around him, forcing him to adjust his footing constantly. When the fire followed, he moved with calm precision, stepping carefully through the heat. Celera watched silently. She had never seen a human or any being keep such control under conditions like this. Every instinct in their body would have screamed to panic. But Marcus moved as if he were navigating a familiar path, steady and confident. Minutes passed. The chamber's chaos continued without pause, yet Marcus's determination did not waver. Sweat ran down his face, his clothes were soaked, his skin burned from the fire and chilled from the water, but he endured. His mind was stronger than the trial anticipated. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the chamber paused. The waves of fire and water froze mid-motion and then vanished. The shadows dissolved into mist, leaving Marcus standing in the center, breathing heavily, but smiling. Celera approached him quietly, her expression unreadable. "You have lasted longer than anyone," she said. "Your body is tired, your lungs are burning, yet your spirit does not falter." Marcus wiped his brow and laughed softly. "Endurance is as much about patience as it is about strength," he said. "You push too hard, most will break. I just keep going." Celera's eyes lingered on him. In all her years as the trial's keeper, she had never seen anyone endure like this. Every challenger before him had begged, panicked, or collapsed. Marcus had endured, and more, he had remained calm, even in humor, in control when the trial wanted to steal that control away. The trial was not finished. Marcus knew this. But he had made the first victory without striking a blow, without shouting, without cheating. He had survived by using the simplest yet most powerful tool of all, his own mind. Celera stepped back slightly. "You are unlike any other," she said quietly, almost to herself. And the night is far from over. Marcus nodded, breathing heavily but smiling. Good. I like a challenge. The chamber trembled again. Marcus tightened his stance. The trial was not done, but he felt ready. Whatever came next, he would face it. The chaos of the trial had faded. The chamber, which had moments ago roared with fire, water, and shadow, was now silent. Too silent. Marcus paused, listening. The walls, the floor, and even the air seemed to hold their breath, waiting. Celara stood nearby, unmoving as always, her eyes sharp and calculating. The trial now moves into the silent hours, she said. Here, it tests the mind without distractions. Many break not from pain, but from stillness. Marcus nodded. He took a deep breath and sat down on the stone floor, crossing his legs. The chill from earlier had faded, leaving the chamber comfortably cool. Yet the silence was heavy, pressing against him like an invisible weight. At first, Marcus thought he could simply sit and wait. But soon, subtle illusions began to creep into the room. Faint whispers, softer than before, threaded through the air. Shadows lengthened at the corners of his eyes. He could almost feel shapes moving behind him, shapes that weren't there. He closed his eyes for a moment. All right, he whispered to himself, silence. Let's see what you've got. The trial was clever. It did not rely on physical pain here. It tried to unsettle his mind. His memories surfaced, old fears and doubts long buried. He remembered times he had failed, moments when he felt small and powerless. The human instinct to give up tugged at him, but he breathed deeply, steadying himself. Celara watched quietly. Most challengers would already be struggling, their bodies trembling from panic. Marcus, however, remained calm. His eyes closed, but his face showed neither fear nor tension. Instead, there was focus, a quiet determination that anchored him. Minutes passed. The whispers grew into faint voices he remembered from his past, teachers, friends, family. They criticized him, questioned his choices, and reminded him of his limitations. His first instinct was to respond, to defend himself. Instead, he sat silently, letting the voices flow past him like wind. He thought of Earth, his home planet. He pictured long winter nights when people gathered together, sharing warmth and stories. Even in hardship, humanity had always found a way to endure, to hope. He held onto that thought, imagining a fire and the comfort of voices speaking softly in the dark. Slowly, Marcus began to hum. A simple tune, soft and steady, rising above the whispers. The hum was not loud, but it filled the silence with something real, something human. It was not a weapon or a shield, yet it carried power. The illusions hesitated. The shadows shrank slightly. The whispers faltered. Celara raised an eyebrow, surprised. She had never seen a challenger face the silent hours this way. Most fought the illusions, struggling against the mental pressure. Marcus, however, had accepted it. He had anchored himself in memory and calm, and in doing so, he had taken control. The chamber's air shifted again. Faint images began to appear, like flickers of memory on the walls. Scenes from Marcus's life, moments of joy, sadness, and loss, played in loops. Other challengers would have panicked, seeing their lives displayed so clearly, their failures and regrets magnified. Marcus, however, only smiled faintly. "You cannot frighten me with my past," he whispered. "It's mine, and it made me who I am." Time passed, stretching into hours. The silent chamber offered no relief, no movement, no challenge except what came from within. Marcus continued to hum softly, focusing on the warmth of his memories, the strength of human resilience. He felt fatigue creeping into his body, but it was different from fear. This fatigue tested patience, not wool. Celery moved closer, studying him carefully. She noticed the way he breathed steadily, the slight rise and fall of his chest, the calm in his eyes. This human had endured not by brute strength, but by controlling his own mind. He had survived what countless others could not: silence, stillness, and the subtle pressure of doubt. Finally, after what felt like endless hours, the chamber shifted again. Light returned slowly, soft and warm, bathing the walls in a gentle glow. The illusions faded completely, leaving Marcus still seated in the center, unharmed, unbroken, smiling. He opened his eyes slowly, taking in the chamber. Celery's gaze met his. For the first time, she spoke without the usual edge of distance. "You have faced the silent hours," she said softly. "Few could have endured as you have. Your mind, it is stronger than the trial expected." Marcus nodded, still seated. "Silence is easier when you have a place to hold on to," he said simply. "A thought, a memory, something that reminds you why you keep going." Celery's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. She stepped back slightly. "You are different," she murmured. "Not many would have lasted. Not many would have found strength in this quiet." Marcus stood, stretching his arms and legs. "I've learned that it's not just about surviving the trial," he said. "It's about surviving yourself. And so far, so good." The chamber pulsed once, softly this time, as if acknowledging his words. The night was far from over, but Marcus had endured another test. He had survived where others had fallen. And for the first time, the trial began to feel less like an enemy, and more like a challenge waiting to be conquered. The sun was just setting behind the tall mountains of Zekra, painting the sky with orange and purple. Neil stood near the council hall, waiting for the elders to finish their discussion. After days of watching him face the trial night, the council was now deciding his fate. Lyra stood beside him, silent but calm. Her eyes, once cold and distant, now held a quiet warmth. Neil had seen a side of her no one else had: the weight she carried, and the hope she had quietly dared to hold. "Do you think they will accept me?" Neil asked softly. Lyra turned to him. "You have already changed many minds. But acceptance is not easy. It takes time." Neil nodded, looking out at the city below. The streets were still filled with whispers of the trial night. Some were amazed, some confused. Many had never believed a human could survive, let alone smile after such a challenge. The doors to the council chamber opened. The elders stepped out, their faces serious. The leader, a tall figure with silver hair, spoke in a voice clear and strong. "Neil of Earth, you have passed the trial night in a way no other outsider has. You did not fight with anger or force. You chose understanding, patience, and kindness. For this, the council offers you a new place among us." Neil felt his heart beat faster. "I am honored," he said. The leader smiled slightly. "This is not just for you, but for your people. We hope this is the start of a new alliance. One where our worlds can share knowledge, strength, and peace." A murmur rose among the gathered crowd. Aliens from many planets stood together, some nodding, others watching with curiosity. The old fear of outsiders was still there, but it was beginning to fade. Lyra stepped forward. The trial night was never meant to break all who came here. It was a test to find those who could bring balance, who could see beyond tradition and fear. Neil looked at her with respect. Then we both passed, in different ways. The council agreed to send ambassadors to Earth. They wanted to learn about humanity's resilience, creativity, and heart. In return, humans would learn about the wisdom of the Zekrons and their allies. Over the next weeks, Neil and Lyra worked closely. They shared stories of their world's tales of courage, of struggle, and of hope. Each day, their friendship grew stronger, a symbol of what could be achieved when fear was replaced with trust. One afternoon, as they walked through the city garden, Lyra spoke softly. "You have taught me something very important, Neil. The trial night is not just about strength. It is about connection." Neil smiled. "That is what makes us human. We may be small in the universe, but our hearts are big." Lyra looked at the flowers blooming around them. "And your heart has opened a door that many thought was closed forever." The alliance grew. Planets once distant and silent began to communicate. Trade routes were opened, and ideas flowed freely between worlds. The galaxy seemed smaller, more connected. Neil often thought about the first night he met Lyra. The fear, the challenge, and the unexpected friendship that followed. It had changed him, and it had changed the galaxy. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Neil stood on the balcony of the council hall. He looked out at the stars, feeling hope shine brighter than ever. Lyra joined him. "The trial night is over, but our journey has just begun." Neil nodded. "Together, we will build a future where all can live in peace." They stood side by side, two beings from different worlds united by a single goal to bring light where there was darkness, and hope where there was fear. The new alliance was not just about politics or power. It was about understanding, friendship, and the courage to change. And for the first time in history, the trial night had a new meaning, a symbol of unity and hope that would inspire generations to come. The night sky stretched wide and calm over the city of Zekra, now glowing softly with the light of 1,000 stars. The air was filled with a peaceful quiet, a calm that had not been felt for many cycles. The trial night, once a symbol of fear and pain, had passed, and for the first time, a human had walked away smiling. Neil stood at the edge of the council hall's grand balcony, looking out at the world below. The city sparkled with new life. Buildings that once seemed cold and distant now felt warm, alive with hope. The faces of the people around him showed something he had never seen before: respect and trust. Beside him, Lyra stood quietly. The fierce guardian who had once been the trial night's unyielding judge now looked at Neil with something close to admiration. She had seen the power of a human heart, the strength that was not in the body, but in kindness, patience, and understanding. "You did something no one else could," she said softly, her voice carrying across the quiet night. "You changed not only the trial but all of Zekra." Neil smiled, the light in his eyes reflecting the stars above. "I did not do it alone. You gave me the chance to try. You believed in something new." Lyra's expression softened. "For many cycles, the trial was a way to protect our world from outsiders. But you showed me it could be a way to welcome new friends." They stood together, two different beings from different worlds, united by a shared journey. The council chamber behind them was filled with leaders from many planets. They had come together to witness the new beginning, a future where old fears could be left behind. Neil's success in the trial night had opened a door that many thought was locked forever. One elder stepped forward. His voice was calm but full of meaning. "Neil of Earth, you have passed the trial night not by defeating the challenge, but by understanding it. You have shown us that strength is not always force. It is also heart." Neil bowed his head respectfully. "I hope this is just the beginning. There is much we can learn from each other." The elder nodded. "Indeed. We will send ambassadors to your world. Together, we will build a galaxy where peace is not just a dream, but a reality." As the ceremony ended, the crowd began to disperse, talking excitedly about the new possibilities. Neil and Lyra remained on the balcony a little longer. "Do you think this will change everything?" Neil asked. Lyra looked up at the stars. "Change is never easy. But it is necessary. What you did tonight was a step toward a better future for all." Neil took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill his lungs. "Then we must keep stepping forward." Days turned into weeks. Neil and Lyra worked side by side, helping the council and the new alliance grow stronger. They shared stories, ideas, and plans for a galaxy where different worlds could live and thrive together. Neil often visited the city's garden, where flowers bloomed even under the strange stars. Here, he found quiet moments to think about the journey that had brought him here, from a stranger facing an impossible challenge, to a symbol of hope for many. One afternoon, Lyra joined him in the garden. "You smile easily now," she said, watching him gently. Neil laughed softly. "Because there is much to smile about. We have started something good, something real." Lyra nodded. "You changed the trial night. But more importantly, you changed hearts." Neil looked at her. "And you changed mine." The garden was silent except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city. Two friends, from different worlds, standing together beneath the sky. News of Neil's success spread beyond Zekra. Across the stars, people and aliens alike heard the story of the human who had faced the trial night with courage and kindness, and had walked away smiling. Many were inspired. Many began to hope. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic talks started. Old enemies met at tables instead of battlefields. The galaxy, once filled with suspicion and fear, began to see a new light. For Neil, the journey was just beginning. He knew that challenges would come. Old habits die slowly. But he also knew that with friendship, respect, and courage, the impossible could become possible. One evening, standing once again on the balcony, Neil looked up at the stars. He thought of Earth, his home, and of the new home he was helping to build among the stars. He smiled again, quietly, inside and out. The trial night was no longer a night of fear. It was the dawn of hope.